When you think about a bad night's sleep, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably those dark circles under your eyes, right? But what if I told you the real telltale sign of sleep deprivation wasn't on your face at all, but on your head? Today, we're diving deep into this surprising connection between your sleep and your hair. You know those weeks, the ones where you're just burning the candle at both ends, chasing deadlines, and then you happen to look down and see, well, a little more hair in the shower drain than usual? Yeah. We tend to blame it on stress or maybe a new shampoo, but what if the real culprit is something we're all guilty of? Messing with our sleep schedule. Get this. A 2023 study found that men who consistently slept 6 hours or less were a whopping 3.7 times more likely to experience severe hair loss compared to the guys getting a full night's rest. I mean, that is a huge link, right? And it's exactly the kind of fascinating and kind of surprising stuff we love to unpack here. So welcome to Sleepedia, your little corner of the internet dedicated to the science of sleep and circadian rhythms. Today, we're going to show you exactly why a good night's rest might just be the best thing you can do for your hair. All right, so here's what we're going to dive into today. First, we'll look at that surprising sleep connection. Then we'll get into your hair follicle's own personal clock. Yes, it has one. We'll talk about hormones on high alert, the energy and safety crisis that happens in your scalp, and finally, why sleep is pretty much the ultimate free hair care. Let's do it. So let's jump right in. The thing is, this connection isn't something that just slowly builds up over years and years. Oh no, the impact of bad sleep on your hair, it's immediate and it is totally measurable. It's a direct biological response. In this chart right here, it shows just how fast things can go south. In one experiment, researchers looked at beard hair growth. They chose it because, it grows so fast. And after just 48 hours of sleep deprivation, they saw a 19% drop in growth. 19%. So this isn't just a vague theory. It's a real, measurable slowdown. So what in the world is going on? Well, it all comes down to timing. Believe it or not, every single hair follicle on your head, it's like its own tiny, independent time-keeping organ. Seriously, it's got its own schedule, its own rhythm, and it is deeply, deeply in sync with your sleep-wake cycle. So deep inside each of those follicles, you've got these things that are literally called clock genes. The best way to think of them is like a tiny little factory foreman running a super strict 24-hour schedule. They're the ones telling the cells when to work and when to rest. And this internal clock, this peripheral circadian clock, it's the real secret to healthy hair. And that foreman's job really just boils down to a simple two-step rhythm. You've got the Anagen phase, that's the growth phase, where cells are busy building the hair strand. And then you have the Telogen phase, which is the resting or shedding phase. When everything's working right, that clock makes sure you have a nice, long, productive growth phase before it's time to let go. But what happens when you pull an all-nighter or your sleep is just constantly broken up? Well, you basically throw that little factory foreman into total chaos. The shift whistle blows at all the wrong times, and the result? Your hair gets kicked out of that productive growth phase way, way too early and gets forced into the shedding phase. And that right there is why you suddenly start seeing more hair on your brush. It's not just about the internal clocks. Sleep is also conducting this incredibly complex hormonal orchestra every single night. And when we talk about your hair, there are some very clear heroes and some definite villains in this story. So on one side, you've got melatonin. He's our hero. We all know it as the sleep hormone, right? But in your scalp, it's the super powerful antioxidant. It's like a night watchman cleaning up all the metabolic rust, that oxidative stress that damages your follicle cells. And then you've got the villain, cortisol.
A lack of sleep floods your system with a stress hormone, and it actively goes to work destroying the very structures that anchor your hair in your scalp.
Yeah, this quote absolutely nails it. Your hair is held in place by this kind of biological glue. And what does high cortisol from poor sleep do? It literally dissolves that glue. This can lead to a condition called telogen effluvium. That's when hair falls out in clumps, sometimes months after you lost all that sleep, because it takes that long for the unglued hair to finally make its way out.
But it's not just about playing defense, right? It's about building too. And for that, we need growth hormone. Now just look at this chart. A massive 75% of your daily growth hormone gets released during one very specific phase of sleep, that deep, slow-wave sleep. So you can see where this is going. If you're not getting enough of that deep sleep, you are completely missing this critical window. Your hair is made of a protein called keratin, and growth hormone is basically the signal telling your follicles, hey, time to make some keratin. Without that GH pulse from deep sleep, your hair is pretty much being starved of the very building blocks it needs to grow thick and strong.
So we've seen how sleep syncs our clocks and balances our hormones, but it also fuels the entire operation. Let's zoom way in, down to the cellular level, to see what happens during this energy and safety crisis that happens when you don't sleep enough. You might not think about it, but hair growth is one of the most energy-demanding things your body does. So after a great night's sleep, the little powerhouses in your cells, the mitochondria, are totally charged up. They're just pumping out ATP, which is the cellular energy that fuels all that growth. But after a bad night's sleep, those same mitochondria get super sluggish. They just can't produce enough energy. And here's the key. Your body is all about priorities. And, sorry to say, your hair is not considered essential for survival. So when the energy budget gets tight, hair growth is one of the very first things to get cut. The whole factory just powers down. And if an energy crisis wasn't bad enough, a lack of sleep also creates a genuinely hostile environment for your hair. It cranks up system-wide inflammation, which then releases a chemical that literally signals your hair follicles to self-destruct. It's a process called apoptosis, or cellular suicide. So it's not just a bad environment for growth, it's actively toxic to your hair. Wow. Okay, so after seeing all the ways things can go horribly wrong, let's bring it all back together. It becomes so clear that sleep isn't just you lying there doing nothing. It is the most active, the most restorative, and honestly, the most foundational hair care treatment you could ever get. And you know the best part? It's totally free. Seriously, think of a good night's sleep as just running down this entire hair health checklist. Every single night, you are synchronizing those follicle clocks. You're releasing protective melatonin, you're shutting down destructive cortisol, delivering that big pulse of growth hormone, recharging every cell's battery, and calming down that dangerous scalp inflammation. You're doing everything right without even trying. And this table just lays it all out. Nice and simple. The connection is crystal clear. Are you noticing more shedding? Well, that's your clocks being all out of whack and cortisol dissolving that biological glue. Sleep solution? It resets the clocks and lowers the cortisol. Is your hair feeling thinner? That's probably low growth hormone and oxidative stress. Sleep solution? It pulses the GH and releases that protective melatonin. Is growth just painfully slow? That's your cellular batteries running on empty. Sleep recharges them with energy. See? For every single problem, sleep offers a direct biological solution. So we'll just leave you with this one final thought. We spend so much money, right, on special shampoos and serums and all kinds of treatments. But what if the single most powerful hair growth tool you own has been right there on your bed the entire time? Just something to think about tonight.